marketing partners, Google India. His focus is on partnerships with creative and media agencies to drive digital transformation for the advertiser. And prior to this, he was the head of entertainment at YouTube India, and he'd introduced many new product features like YouTube Originals and YouTube Shorts. We also have Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, chairman of BharatPe, a career banker for 4 decades and retired as the chairman of the country's oldest public sector bank, the State Bank of India. Mr. Kumar is also an independent non-executive director at HSBC Bank Asia and L&T Infotech. Sandeep Goyal, Managing Director Moglix, one of India's largest B2B companies. Mr. Goyal has around 25 years of experience in setting up, managing, acquiring and integrating businesses. He has an extensive leadership experience of working across diverse sectors like investment banking, FMCG, CPG and process manufacturing. So if I could invite all of you gentlemen up on stage. Niranjan, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Sandeep Goyal, Mr. Satya Raghavan. It's over to you, Niranjan.
Thank you, Rini. So through the day we had a lot of policy makers, thinkers, threw up a lot of numbers. So I'm not going to keep it very technical, and I know that this is about digital, so a lot of people will want to throw numbers in there, but just one, I'll start with one number and my experience with how digital has changed my life. This year, for example, there were about 74 billion digital payments in India. 74 billion digital payments compared to 25 billion in 2021, while China had about 15 billion digital payments. So in 2021, 25 billion digital payments and 74 billion by this year in July. So I'll start with Mr. Rajneesh Kumar. Rajneesh sir, you've been at the biggest bank in India, right? I don't carry a wallet anymore. Do you carry a wallet, sir?
No.
I don't carry a wallet. Do you carry a wallet, Satya?
I carry a wallet, but it's mostly pictures of my family, but no cash.
Typical.
Yeah.
What about you, Sandeep? Do you carry a wallet?
Yeah, no cash.
No cash in it. So I carry a wallet with just my IDs because you have to show them at the airport. But the last time I honestly don't remember going to an ATM. I haven't gone to an ATM in the longest time. When I go to a restaurant, sometimes they don't take tips because they take service charge, right? But when you want to leave tips, I ask them for their QR code, right? It's changed the way we live, right? I pay from my driver to everyone online. So Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, let me start with you. You know, we spoke about mission, when you speak about mission superpower, right? Figures tell us that we're going to be a 1 trillion economy, digital economy, by 2025. How have you seen the transformation from the classic banking to banking as you see it today, and payments?
So, you're asking about me.
Yes, sir, your experience and the transition that you've seen.
So State Bank of India, you know, as you mentioned, that it is the largest bank, it's a legacy bank. It has a history of more than 200 years. And when I joined the State Bank of India in 1980, it was all manual ledgers and whatnot. And by the time I left the bank, it is a complete transformation. As you said that you hardly now even need to go to ATMs. And in the bank also, if it is not digital, no question of survival. And it is remarkable the way State Bank of India transformed itself as far as its digital journey is concerned, and with support of many partners, including Google and Amazon and who not. as far as the technology is concerned. And currently this transition from State Bank to non-executive chairman of BharatPe. So this again is a very exciting transition for me. And the average age in BharatPe is 28. So you can imagine, it is only the 3 board members who are on the wrong side of the age. But it doesn't make a difference, because when we calculate the average age, it remains unchanged. Because of 3 people, me, Mr. Kanungo and Kaushik Datta, it doesn't change that profile. And when we are talking about mission superpower, then apart from what we heard about the infrastructure, physical infrastructure, but this mission will be achieved on the basis of the technology, creation of digital infrastructure. And only, I think last week, we have created a definition, harmonized definition of infrastructure, where data centers now are covered under infrastructure. Otherwise, when we talk about infrastructure, we think of about roads, we think about power, we think about railways. But when we now talk about infrastructure, the most important element would be now digital infrastructure. And the vision which our Honorable Prime Minister has laid, so it is about everything. It's about your physical infrastructure. Honorable Union Minister Gadkari ji, he outlined that vision, and earlier during the day many ministers came and outlined that vision. But the public good as well as the welfare of the citizens, that cannot be achieved for a country with more than 1.4 billion population without creating a very robust digital infrastructure.
Great. So you've seen everything from the ledgers to the apps. You're at the app right now. All right. Now, Satya, remember YouTube and Google, remember meeting you at the YouTube office, I think when just before Republic was launching. Back then, this was 2016 if I'm not wrong. Back then YouTube was a content platform where people would create videos and upload videos. But today it's a source of living, a source of income for what? How many people? How many people?
Yeah, no, thanks for sending me down memory lane. You're absolutely right. At one point of time, YouTube was a place where people came to express themselves, right? And that's exactly what everyone still does. I still remember way back in 2014 when I joined Google, most of the content on the platform was about music or food or comedy. As the years went by, in addition to being a place for entertainment, it also became a place for information, infotainment and things like that. In the last 3 or 4 years, it's also emerged as an amazing place for learning. Whether it is for young children or people wanting to move up in the professional side of things. And while all of this was happening, exactly as you said, we also realized that it was actually creating an economic impact. It was also creating societal impact, cultural impact and all of that. But worldwide, we spent a lot of time trying to understand this phenomena. In India, we launched our first YouTube economic impact report, where a third party obviously did this, and we realized that, and we quantified this to a large extent. We realized that through and the business model of YouTube, a lot of people are obviously aware of, but I'd love to say that, is we primarily generate a lot of our revenues through advertising, but over the years we've also added many other features like subscriptions, memberships and things like that. Whatever we collect from the marketplace, a majority of that goes back to the people who create that content. And that number is what we sought to quantify. And not just that, right? It's also then the ripple effect of all of that.
Do you have a number of how?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first report that we came out in 2020, we figured out that YouTube, the economic impact to the Indian GDP was about 6,800 crores. And while we did that, we also added about 6,83,900 jobs, right? So everyone from, someone who is at her home, possibly making videos on food, to, even a entity like yourself who uses it to get even more reach, right? So including all of these is what we realize. So you're right, today it's actually an economic value add to the country.
I'll tell you, I was sharing the story with you, and I just want to share it with all our audience as well. So, can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, I remember reporting, I shared the story with you. I remember reporting when the government was changing in Maharashtra recently, when the Shinde government was coming in and the Uddhav government was going out, and I was on the field. I still remember it was the Mantralaya, and we were there. And this car was passing by, and then, sometimes it happens that someone spots a TV crew, they stop and they come and sort of, just watch what's going on. So there was this guy who just came, very unassuming guy. He came and he said, so he waited for my life to end, and he said, I'm one of the biggest YouTubers on Hindi. And I looked him up, I just looked him up. He runs a channel called Sach Tak or something. I just remembered seeing that. And the number was right. He said he makes 3 crore a year or 30 lakhs a month from YouTube videos. And these could be videos of his analysis on the Maharashtra situation or anything, right? So it's changed how people look at the digital medium. It's not just anymore about a vocational occupation, right? I mean, they do it for a living. Do you have any stories of how it's changed people's lives?
Yeah, absolutely right. Right from emotional moments when a lot of our creators actually come and say that because of YouTube I was able to buy a house for my parents. 2 stories like this. I don't know the actual number of what this gentleman earns, but we did some analysis and we realized that the number of channels that are earning more than $100,000 in a year is actually growing 60% year on year. Right? So I mean, I love the tagline here, which is Mission Superpower. So I think what YouTube ends up doing is to actually superpower, people out there, right?
Yeah. And another, I mean, one of course, Rajneesh ji is a banker. He's seen how banking and digital banking has changed how we look at digital India, right? And people like Google and YouTube are helping India doing that. The people who are using digital to make our lives easier, Sandeep. So Sandeep is from Moglix. So Moglix, Sandeep, let me tell a story to our audience about what you do, and correct me if I'm wrong. So I grew up in Bangalore, and in Bangalore, because my father is an engineer and my parents were both engineers, and every Sunday we either did gardening or fixed something in the house, maybe a socket box or something, right? So we had to get a nail or a hammer or a screwdriver or a box of paint, Asian paint, whatever it is, right? We would go to this road called Tannery Road in Bangalore. That's where all the hardware stores are. Today what Moglix does is they brought all your hardware stores and it's on a platform. So basically it's like a Flipkart of hardware stores.
That's
right? And you're a unicorn.
Yes, we are.
Why don't you share your story of how that's changed, the way people look at hardware, for example?
Yeah, so I'll just go back to year 2015 when we started, and by then Flipkart, Amazon, the B2C platforms were very popular in the country. And then we all had some association with the manufacturing sector. My father was in pharmaceutical company, other leadership members were working in manufacturing sector. And we realized that while the consumer buying has changed, when I need a phone, I need a shirt, I need a book, I go to Amazon, Flipkart, browse through a catalog and buy. In the manufacturing sector, the buying is continuing in the same traditional manner, where you have paper catalogs, you're making a phone call to figure out where will I find it, or you go to the markets. And each city has these markets. Delhi has Chowdi Bazaar, Mumbai has Lohar Chawl, Hyderabad has Raniganj, Chennai has Paris Corner. And these are the markets where the industries are buying from. So we thought, let's study the industrial side of it and how the industry is procuring, and came across some very, very interesting stats. For maintenance, repairs and operations in a plant, leave the direct material aside, just for maintaining, repairing and running the operations in a plant, each mid-sized plant requires close to 15,000 different products. Could be a safety shoes, safety helmets, hammer, and drill machine, lubricant oil. And they buy these 15,000 products from 400 different suppliers who are based out of likes of Chavdi Bazaar or Paris Corner, Lohar Chaul.
Yeah.
Zero catalog, zero visibility, zero customer experience. Very, very traditional. And that's when we thought that we should disrupt and change it for 4 reasons. One is the consumer experience, the governance part, because it brings a whole lot of transparency into the transaction, the efficiency part, and the data part. Data, in fact, I have a funny story from our early days. We received an order from one of the customers, a large plant. We received an order, and we saw our team was struggling, scratching their head, saying that how do we fulfill this order? And we asked, what are you looking for? They said, this customer has asked for jalebi light. It was
Jalebi light?
Jalebi light.
What is a jalebi light?
In Rudrapur, the plant was. And then we called the customer, hey, we have received an order for jalebi lights. What exactly
and
are
how many
you
jalebi lights did they want?
It was industrial, so they were looking for some 200, 300 jalebi lights. When we called, we realized they were looking for a spiral LED.
Spiral LED?
Which was stored as a jalebi light in their ERP system, and that spoke about the quality of data. Right, so that's been the journey. Today, we are the catalog for India. We have over 800,000 products in our catalog, which small, mid-size, large companies can go and buy from the products that you talked about, bringing the whole, efficiency, governance, user experience to the process.
Great. Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, you spoke about the digital transformation, right? You speak about digital India, and last 6 to 7 years, especially in the last 6 to 7 years, you've seen the digital currency, the digital payments boom, right? Now, with the RBI set to launch the digital currency, and in the concept note they mentioned scalability of the platform, now in the existing scheme of things, how is that going to be a game changer?
So, RBI has come out with a concept note which you might have seen about 3 weeks back.
Yeah.
And that is about the digital currencies.
Yeah.
And 2 types of digital currencies, one for wholesale and one for retail. So, as far as you and me are concerned, it is about the rollout of the retail digital currency.
Yeah.
And if that happens successfully, then so many issues related with the currency notes or the cash currency will hopefully go away. Because I am always mindful of the fact that whenever you introduce something new, it comes with a new set of problems. Right. So when we talk about digital, when we talk about technology, it's not that it doesn't come with its own set of problems. It does bring in its own set of problems. Currently the problem is that there is too much cash circulating in the economy despite the explosion in the digital payments. The currency in circulation is about 31 trillion rupees, 31 lakh crore, and out of which about 73% is 500 rupees, high value in note. So do we need so many 500 rupees note for doing the transactions? I doubt that we need 22 lakh crore worth of 500 rupee notes for doing the transactions. So we may need a fraction of it.
Right.
And the issues around money laundering, tax evasion, I think it is a perfect solution for that. But as I said, that it will take time. The concept is yet to be tested.
But even demonetization started off as something that was highly suspect. But today you look at the digital payment boom. Thank God for demonetization.
Yeah.
Right?
So you were rolling out the numbers, like you were reading out the numbers about the digital transactions. And with so many transactions happening digitally, then, and if all of us have said that we don't use cash for transaction, so where is this 22 lakh or 31? 31 lakh crore, like 9 lakh crore is small denomination note. It's all right. But where are these 500 rupees notes sitting? I doubt they are being used for transactions. So, a successful implementation using the technology of digital currency over, say, next 5 years or a little bit more. But this is going to revolutionize the
Okay.
whole system and will play a very, very critical role as far as the tax evasion, money laundering, terrorist financing is concerned.
Yeah, looks like that's the big picture. Okay. Satya, Google has announced a 10 billion Google fund for India digitization. What is this fund and how many people will this fund help?
Yeah, so we launched the India Digitization Fund, which has a value of around $10 billion, about 2 or 3 years ago now. Some of the early investments were behind infrastructural place. So we invested in Geo platforms, we invested in BharatPe Airtel. We've also since then invested in the financial, in the fintech sector, in .pay, and also in the banking space with Neo Bank Open. So the whole idea is that, obviously, the potential that we see here in India, especially given that now, as I was saying, right, earlier, people on YouTube were in the tens of millions, but now it's in the hundreds of millions. So the sheer potential of this country to get connected, but more importantly, how every individual can then tap into that and realize their potential is really the ethos behind this digitization fund. And just the sheer diversity that you see in the country, whether it is what you can do with languages. So, we have invested in ventures which actually focus on languages, or what you see in finance, right, which can then impact millions of people in one go. So the idea is to really catalyze all of that.
Yeah. Abhishek, now at a grassroots level, Sandeep, you can take that. Sandeep, at a grassroots level, how well placed is India's digital infrastructure to adapt to technology, adapt to platforms? For example, why don't you tell us a little bit about, Sandeep, how many people or how many companies, how many industries are willing to adapt these new digital technologies?
So it's, there have been, of course, an evolution. I think B2C set the stage where we as individuals got used to, being on phone, transacting on phone, buying things for personal use on phone. And of course, we have a professional life, the same procurement folks who work in office. When they are at home, they are buying a book from Flipkart. When they go to office, they are procuring for the company, and they realize the difference between how they are buying personal stuff and right. So the desire to adopt, desire to use the technology was extremely high, even in the manufacturing sector, and thanks to the whole B2C transformation. Two other things which propelled the whole growth for the digital piece. One was GST for us specifically. Another data point, if I don't know whether I mentioned earlier, is these 10 to 15,000 products per plant I was talking about, they get procured from 400 different suppliers, which is, a whole lot of work for a company to do the tax reconciliation and all, right? So that accelerated adoption of a digital platform like ours. And then COVID, of course, when the whole supply chain was disrupted, you don't know which zone is going to be in the lockdown, whether you will be able to get your product. The reliance on platforms like us, which are across.
Stores closed,
stores
seen a boom.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right. So in that case, you create a supply chain. So that was a big factor. So I would say the overall preparedness for adoption is extremely high. There are 20,000 plus large plants in India, which will be probably in the range of $1 billion or so. And pretty much all of them are looking at adopting a solution like this. Thanks to the infrastructure, I think infrastructure with 5G, of course, is arriving, which will have a larger impact on the rich content-driven digital side, education, etc., or entertainment. But I think for our industry, the digital infrastructure is pretty much in place, whatever we require and ready to go.
So, because our theme is Mission Superpower, let me get in each one of you for 30 seconds and I'll end this. We are the world's digital headquarters. I'd like to believe that. We spoke about the China example. We've overtaken them by miles on digital payments. Rajneesh Kumarji, let me start with you. What is that one big push that you need, push that you think we need in the digital economy that can really take us miles ahead?
So, I think as far as payment is concerned, we are doing all right and we are doing quite well. You already, statistics speak about it, that how India has emerged as a leader as far as payment system is concerned. So the next big push would be around availability of credit using digital, and we are making good progress on that front. The financial inclusion would be complete only when what we have created so far and what we are creating or is in the process of creating is the availability of the credit to the common man who still feels hassle in getting a loan from the legacy institutions.
Okay. Satya, what is that one big push that you feel from a Google perspective, or from a...
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, and I actually wanted to take off from Moglix, right? I think it's a fascinating example of inclusivity, right? So here's a business model that is focused on nuts and bolts, right? No pun intended. And if actually they can take people who deal in nuts and bolts and give them a global playing field, I think inclusivity is going to be very important, right? We've seen it work on YouTube. We've seen the payments ecosystem really boom because of the inclusivity that it has, right? So I would say business models that can that can use the ease with which you can do business using digital technologies, but yet be inclusive so that it benefits a vast majority of people. I think those will be very important business models to kind of look at.
Yeah. Sandeep, in 30 seconds, and what is that one big push that India needs to get ahead?
So I'll just refer to what Gadkariji was talking. I think for our business, it's the infrastructure, these green highways, because we have to get the material from point A to point B in fastest time. I think infrastructure goes up, digital is in place, finance aspects are in place, huge funding coming into India. I think all that is in place. So infrastructure is what I will put at the top.
Great. So at the end, 100 unicorns, over 100 unicorns, 335 billion valuation for these over 100 unicorns. And the best and the most beautiful part of it is all these 100 unicorns are targeting a mobile first economy. All of them. All the 100. Fantastic times to live in. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Rajneesh ji, and thank you, Satya, for being a part of our panel this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Raghavan, and Mr. Goyal for that captivating discussion. Thank you, Niranjan, for steering that discussion so well. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at our concluding session now, and I'd like to now invite at the second India Economic Summit, the Editor-in-Chief, Republic Media Network, Mr. Arnab Goswami, to please introduce our special guest, Mr. S. Gurumurthy. Arnab? All right. Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together to welcome Mr. S. Gurumurthy.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a fanboy moment for me today because I have met Mr. Gurumurthy in person for the first time in my life. Is that so, Mr. Gurumurthy? We It's like you've known someone for the longest time. And for me, he has been my guru. So when you meet your guru for the first time physically, it's an overwhelming moment for me. So Mr. Gurumurthy, I can talk about what he's going to talk about, but I'd rather talk about him. I am tremendously excited today to welcome someone on stage who is firebrand, if there ever was one, a risk taker, a person with the most altruistic spirit, fierce nationalist, ferocious nationalist. And people talk in Lutyens very easily about who's an intellectual and who's not. I have no hesitation in saying that Mr. S. Gurumurthy is beyond doubt India's #1 public intellectual who is among us today. He's a thought leader and an inspiring person. So I'm tremendously excited today to welcome here, and he makes very rare appearances like this. Those who know, and I kept him for the last session because Mr. Gurumurthy rarely comes for events like this, rarely comes on panels. His influence, people talk about his influences, is spoken about. For me, he's a very influential thinker, and we are honored to have you among us here today. Formal introductions are not required for you, sir. You are the chairman of the Vivekananda International Foundation. You are a well-known India's #1 corporate strategist, political thinker, macroeconomist. You are on the RBI board. But for me, as I began by saying, Mr. Gurumurthy is truly my guru, a mentor and a guide. And he's someone who I've looked up to from the beginning of my career as a journalist. His views are dogged, persistent, and totally unpredictable. You don't know what twist he will take. But the incredible thing about Mr. Gurumurthy is, he will take a month, 2 months, 3 months sometimes to produce 2 articles. But those articles, when he writes them, are so condensed and factual in their wisdom that they are Bibles by themselves. So I called Mr. Gurumurthy. I said, sir, you please come. I want you at my event. But he set some conditions to me. He said to me, Arnab, in his own humble way, he said, I don't want to be a burden on your event. I said, sir, you please come. He said, I have been working for the last 6 months on one subject. Almost for 8 to 10 hours every day for the last 6 months, Mr. Gurumurthy has been studying and analyzing, if I get it right, and he can correct me later on stage, in a multidisciplinary way, the impact of global geopolitical trends, post-COVID, post-Ukraine, on what is going to be the future geopolitical and economic order in the world, if I have got your overall picture right. And he believes that we are in for an unpredictable future. But since I was just talking to him even before, he spoke about a silo-free world. He says that the financial system is no longer predictable. He is extremely critical of the Western capitalist model. And he just said there, and I thought it was a very prophetic thought. He said that the short-term capitalist view of the West, as opposed to the long-term view of China, is bearing fruit in some of the trends that we are seeing today. And it's going to be very exciting for us to listen to him. And Mr. Gurumurthy, fanboys should not be allowed to do such long introductions anymore. They should be told to get off the stage. So, huge round of applause. We are honored to have you amidst our midst. Mr. Gurumurthy, please sir, the floor is yours. Thank you, sir.
Namaskarams to all. You know, when you are introduced like this, the bar is raised so high. You have to really climb up and cross it to convince you that how I am introduced is worth it. You know, I was introduced as a macroeconomist. The one thing which he didn't say was I was also a journalist. I am a chartered accountant, but chartered accountants think I am a journalist. The journalists who do not want to accept me as a journalist, they call me as a chartered accountant. He called me as an economist. But you know, when we were carrying on a huge movement against the kind of globalization that had set off in 1990s, so I had taken a position that India will have to produce huge domestic energy, domestic savings. And our domestic consumption will be the core, and the global will be the additive for India. And this I have been articulating in diverse ways through researches and all that. Somebody told Dr. Jagdish Bhagwati, you are saying that India must focus on imports rather than domestic production, and it must focus on getting FDI rather than domestic savings. In fact, he went to the extent of saying India doesn't need savings. India must spend, and through that there should be growth. I mean, I was very critical of him. So somebody went and said, Mr. Gurumurthy holds a contrary view. He said, Mr. Gurumurthy, who is he? No, he is also a very well-known economic thinker. Oh, if Mr. Gurumurthy is an economic thinker, you can call me a BharatNatyam dancer. See, this was the extent to which we were all subjected to in terms of public comments humiliating us in those days. And in fact, recently Mr. P. Chidambaram quoted this in an article in a newspaper, the Indian Express, which I used to very proudly associate with, that Modi's government is comfortable with BharatNatyam dancers as economic advisors. You know, I study economics not from the perspective of a theoretical economist. I have my experience in the world of finance, corporates, law, geopolitics. And when I head the Vivekananda International Foundation, which is probably the most sought after think tank in India by people from outside, because it has put in the trust deed that we will not accept donations from outside India. That is why all the think tanks from outside India want to associate with us, deal with us, because we will be thinking independently. It was Ajit Doval's idea that we should produce a nationalist think tank which will be uninfluenced by people from outside, money from outside, politics from outside. So, we all exist for a purpose. So, from that perspective, you know my credentials now. How economists call me, it's like a BharatNatyam dancer speaking about economics. Now you have to listen to me with this kind of negative comments, which the mainstream economists used to make about people who think independently about economics. Now, I have been asked to speak about the Indian way. You know, my introduction to the Indian way was quite accidental. Being a corporate advisor, dealing with all kinds of international fund flow, investments,